this is a key component, really, of the research side of this digital method, because what you'll see, especially as we get towards the end, is that PDF files are the easiest to treat computationally. So when, for instance, we save something as a Microsoft Word file, what happens is that it gets protected behind Microsoft's computer code. And so it's really important, for instance, to go in and pull out the content from the Word file and use it in different ways, because to do so, you have to really allow that. So the advantage of saving everything in PDF is first, that we don't have to deal with that. That anything we save in a PDF is more or less useful as text to us in multiple contexts. Secondly, the advantage of a PDF is it locks it in terms of formatting. So we all know the story of, somebody saves something in Microsoft here and it goes from a PC using Windows 2004 to a Mac using whatever, and now it looks different, and then we print it and it comes out differently. In PDF, it's always locked in. So there are several advantages, and those are just two. But henceforth, whenever we deal digitally with stuff, we're going to, if it's a base document like what you've got there, we'll always turn it into a PDF, and then we might use it in other contexts. So what we're going to do, and Maureen already has a head start on this because she has a newer version of the scanner, which we bought. I think I got that in 2006. So I'd like to hear about your newer one and how it might be improved.
Yeah, I haven't actually used it yet.
Okay. So what we're going to do is simply jump in and we'll scan some stuff, and then we'll talk about what we can do with it in Acrobat Pro. And very quickly, we're talking about Acrobat Pro, not Acrobat Reader. And the difference is that almost all of it, well, I think we all have Acrobat Reader on our computers, so that when we get PDFs, we can actually read them. But then you can't use them beyond that if you just have Acrobat Reader. When you have Acrobat Pro, which you can buy in the bookstore, you can get an older version for, I think, $65. You can get the current version, I think, for $78. If you have Acrobat Pro, we can then take whatever is a PDF file and use it whichever way we want. And just by way of example, one of the things that really, really drove me nuts, and I decided to change last year, was whenever I was writing letters of reference, they were always sent off as PDFs. But typically, I would write them in Word, and then I would print them literally on our letterhead, and then I would scan them into a PDF, and then I would send them. And the whole process would take several hours because it involved me going to the history department and printing on letterhead and then scanning after I'd signed. And what I do now simply is I have a template so that all my letters of reference for graduate students or for other people who are going up for awards or whatever are locked into templates that I have a signature templated in, and I just change the date in Acrobat Pro, change some of the text, save, and then attach it, and off it goes. And literally none of the running up to Brock and printing and signatures and stuff like that. In fact, if you talk to Heidi and Dinah now, virtually everything I have is a digital signature because I can't be bothered. And it's only when someone complains and I go into ORS or wherever that I physically sign things. So there are multiple things that we can do with the Pro version, like make our own signature, turning it in a little file, and then pulling it in Acrobat Pro at the end of our letters. That's just one example of many. So that's the general setup. Do you have any questions about why we're doing this or what exactly we're going to be doing before we dive in?
I would just suggest that the bookstore seems to sometimes have Acrobat Pro, because I bought a copy, but it was only $30, I think. I could be wrong.
Okay.
And I installed it, but it's a one-time, because it's an education copy or something. It's a one-time thing, so I wanted it for my other computer, and this was in October, and the bookstore said they would certainly call me when they got some in.
Because it's on a key, is it not?
It's a physical something, because you need the serial number.
Right.
So you can only download it once.
download it to that computer once. We only need it once,
But I wanted it on the other computer.
but you couldn't buy another copy.
Well, the bookstore has to buy them in bulk, and so I've been waiting since October.
You can purchase them through the ITS department.
Can you?
They have, that's for Week at Arts. And they'll essentially just give you a disc
Oh,
and
okay.
a number, and then you bring it back to them when you're done.
Then it's just charged to your account.
Oh, okay.
So
Our
that's
grad students were all getting it from the bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
each little
Yeah.
license key is
Yeah.
good for one computer.
Okay,
So you'd have to spend another, and it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 78 for the new one?
The newest one is somewhere between 70 and 80.
Yeah.
And then older versions, if you can get older versions, which I think the bookstore would have, but ITS probably won't.
right.
The older versions are less, but not significantly.
No.
So with an older version, I just have to keep, when they send me updates, just keep updating?
No, you probably have to buy the newer version. The older version's pretty good though. It's not really much that's changed.
Yeah, in fact, this computer has 9, mine has 10, and the difference is really it's just the interface, but the abilities are the exact same.
So do you do anything in Word? Like you just do it all in?
No, I do almost nothing in Word.
So when you go to
10.1.
file shares, if you're doing things with other people, you have to use.
I use Word if I know they're using Word, but
'Cause if
Word
you-
is just an awful program.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But if you're using this, okay.
Sorry, I have some pictures from the archives that are in Adobe. You know, you have a choice there at the computers how you download something onto your key. And I find that it's the worst, but it's probably because I don't know what to do with it, because if it's in whatever the picture files are for Microsoft Word, then there's an automatic, I forget what it's called, but you can improve the quality, because some
Oh,
of these
okay.
are from microfilm, and so they're very dark and they're hard to read. But with Adobe, I find that there's nothing I can do. Like, you can't really change the quality, or
Mhm.
can you?
We can play around with it. I haven't had cause to try that, so I don't know.
I think I actually have some on this
Yeah.
computer, if there's a chance to do it.
Okay, well, let's play around with it.
And also with the other one, if you have pictures, you can just click from one to the next. In Adobe, you have to, at least again, because I don't know how to use it, you go out and you have to go into the next picture. So it's much more frustrating than just clicking from one page.
Well,
to the
using
next.
Pro might make a difference for you then,
Okay.
because Pro is different from Reader
I
and
see.
allows functionality that Reader doesn't have.
Okay.
Even if you decide at the end of all this that you still really like Word for the reasons that you just described, I'd still recommend that you save in the end as a PDF, because then you'll be able to use the text in there. And that's really the key bit, and I've left it for the end, because what you can do in Adobe Acrobat Pro is you essentially run optical character recognition on the document itself. You're not doing that with just the Reader. So you take a document, which is like that, which is a picture, essentially, right, in Acrobat, and then you say, read this text. So what it does is it does optical character recognition. It recognizes the text there. Now, that's going to be hard because it's writing. But you know, if it's typical type text, it will then say, okay, well, I'm going to take this from being a picture to now treating this as actual text,
right.
which then allows us, and this circles back to where I was at the beginning, to use all the text that's in there. So that's the fundamental advantage to it. And we don't have to wade through all kinds of nasty computer code as we would with Word to use that text. Instead of showing you on the screen, which we can't really do, especially because that printer is connected to that computer, what we're all going to do is crowd around Spencer, and then he'll take us through how we do it specifically using that scanner.
The reason that we're doing these two together is because really the best way to use a scanner like this is to link it with Acrobat Pro. Scanners often come with their own software, but no one really likes using that software, and it's not very good. So Acrobat offers a nice way around that software. So I think we had this problem with yours. When we set it up, their software was all weird.
Yeah, but I don't have Acrobat Pro on my computer.
Yeah,
I've
so
got it on
that's-
here, but I can't make it work.
So once you have that, once you have Acrobat Pro, it helps with a lot of the interface issues. So the first thing I'm going to demonstrate is the automatic document feeder, the ADF, which sounds really ridiculous, but essentially, you take an article that page by page would take quite a while to do by hand. You put it into the machine on the top. Yours definitely has this, and it's actually faster than ours. And then in Acrobat,
So you're in Acrobat?
Yep, and then you create a PDF.
Okay.
And you can pick. So if you have image files, like what you're using with the archive, you can create a PDF from those files. You can do more than one file at a time, which saves hours and hours of work. You can pick from the scanner, which is what we'll do. Or you can even do other captures, other options. So if you have a web page or something like that, there's lots of options.
Can we just press pause for a second?
Yeah.
So just stepping back, we all have tons of documentation, like stuff we pull out of JSTOR, right? So what we typically do, and what I was typically doing, was printing that off, then making scratchy marks on it, then taking those notes and typing them in somewhere, and then trying to file and doing it badly, my notes. What we're doing here, we all do it, right? What we're doing is we're throwing all of that out. And we're saying instead, what we're going to do is simply take the PDF file. JSTOR sometimes just gives it to you as pictures. Or in the case of actually having, and this is where it's slightly labor intensive, having something that's paper, scanning it first, which is easy to do if it's an article. And if we can pay someone else to do it, or have a grad student. It's a little bit harder to do when we have a book. But increasingly now we can buy books in a digital format, even though many of those are still boxed in. Just because they advertise a digital format book doesn't mean you can actually use it the way we want. But when there's an opportunity to, I always try and jump at it. But the point is, what we're doing is right now we're parking that process in which we're making scratchy marks on the paper and just sticking with the electronic version.
Right. And what you said about the paper documents, I know this was part of the reason you got it, because you have so many articles that are in paper format but not digital. So if you need to make your library digital, this is the fastest way to do that. And this is what it looks like. So you click from scanner, it brings up this little image that gives you options. So you pick which scanner you're going to use. The options are pretty straightforward. Most of these you can leave. Usually it's create a new document. And then this is the sort of important part, make searchable. So it runs the OCR program so that you can search it later. So all those settings are pretty standard, and you can play around with them and get different results. And then you give it a title. We'll call this test for now. And you pick where you want it to go. We'll put it on the desktop for now. And it brings up this next bit, which is really just the intermediate step. Pick documents and click scan. Now hopefully it will recognize, so that what the scanner does is it checks to see where there's paper. If there's paper in the bottom part, in the flatbed part, it'll scan that. If there isn't, it'll check up here and it'll feed in the document from the top. Sometimes it gets it wrong. It just depends on, sometimes it just depends on whether or not the paper is fully in or not. It can be a little bit finicky. I imagine the newer one's less finicky than this, which is like 6 years old. But
Spencer likes to insult the age of the equipment, which predated him.
yeah. Well, but to be honest, when I got here, this wasn't functioning, so I did get it working.
It worked for a while.
Yeah, I don't know what caused that to happen.
So what does PDF from file mean?
PDF from file would be if you have an image, or if you have a Word document, you can make a PDF from a Word document, or rich text, or a lot of different file formats. I'm not actually sure where they cut it off. There, it's finally going. So it just grabs the pages, feeds them through at a fairly reasonable rate. much faster than you could, you know, one page at a time.
This way you can walk.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
can we have a story from the field then?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to go digital, and I had this book from Interlibrary Loan, but only bits of it I needed. And I was gonna make, you know, photocopies and then read it, which is what we do instead of reading it often, is just make photocopies.
Yeah.
But then I remembered my lessons here, and so I scanned it.
This feels like a setup.
No, but I scanned it at home on a scanner. But it always wants to go to preview.
Right.
But I didn't want it there, and so I made a file. But now I've got, well, I'll show you, it's just a whole JPEG file.
Right, probably, did you run?
See, I didn't go through Acrobat.
Yeah, that would be why, because most scanning programs just make images,
Yeah.
and that's what they're.
Is that what a JPEG is?
Yeah, it's a picture.
So to fix your problem, it's as simple as using Acrobat to turn those images into PDFs.
But I wanted them all I wanted to know that, hey, this is one
Yeah, you
document.
can do that as well.
So there's my JPEG file, which is good. Well, there's the other one.
So when it's done, often it'll ask you, do you have all pages? If you don't, click no, and it gives you each page. When you're done with checking to make sure that it worked, so I have all the pages there, click return, and it'll send it back to whichever program you're using. So if you were using something other than Acrobat, you could also do this progress, but we use Acrobat because it's the best. So it's somewhat slow because it does scan at a really high resolution, which is great because the copy that I'll have digitally will be very close to what is here. If I printed them out again, they'd be nearly identical. So scanning is complete.
And that's a matter of your scanner setting.
Yeah, it's just
So you can scan so that the resolution is low or high.
Mhm.
And higher is better for the reasons Spencer just described. Higher will create bigger files, but you know the way storage is going, I mean the hard drives we can buy now are at least a terabyte for what, $675. You know, in another year it'll be 2 terabytes for that much. So it's the default should always be go to a higher resolution, go to a bigger file, because it'll be cheap to save the thing. It'll be a heck of a lot of work to have to do everything over again if you realize later that you wished you had a better file than the one you have.
And if, like with this one, this is a photocopy of a photocopy, it's not really good quality on the paper, but it's high enough in the computer that it still works. You can see how it's a little bit off, but that's because this is definitely a photocopy. So even despite the low quality paper, it should be high enough for the recognition to work.
So can I press pause for, sorry, go
Just one
ahead.
second. When you say it's going back to the destination, I just didn't quite understand.
Oh, it's just that Acrobat opens up the scanner. It
Right,
like
okay.
opens up the scanner software, and then once it's run, then it just sends it back to Acrobat. So it takes the images
Oh.
and sends them back.
Okay. So
It's
the
kind
images
of
are in Acrobat, is what you're saying?
yeah, exactly.
okay.
It's a little bit of a linkage. One software opens another one, but it always ends up back
Oh,
at
okay.
Acrobat because that's the sort of parent program.
So just to press pause, so the point is that this now can be lost or put in the wrong office or given to the student, never returned or whatever, and it doesn't matter because you have this. If you're working with this, you will always have this. You know, we will be 80 years old, still working on the same stuff that we generally work on now. That's probably the reality, and we'll be able to still use this article that we read in 2012. In contrast to, as I'm sure for you, the myriad
Yeah.
documents I know that I wish I had, but they're with somebody somewhere or shredded. Okay?
But if you freezes, or if you have problems with your computer.
Drop-
why you have
Had you
to-
been here for Dropbox?
But I'm too scared to put anything on Dropbox.
Oh, yeah.
I put a couple
well,
of
we can talk about later, backing everything up
here.
and putting it in Dropbox.
See, it's preserved up there no matter what. That's what the.
You need to be a half counselor and therapist.
We're in the right hallway for that.
So you obviously both never worry about technology technology changing to the point where all this stuff is unusable. That's always my fear, right? Is that, so I'm using Evernote all the time now. Well, what if suddenly, you know, Evernote disappears, or I mean, something that I can't even imagine
Well, you
20
can
years
imagine.
they'll be using.
I used WordPerfect, right?
Yeah, too.
And so the Apple, whatever, you can buy a program that will translate WordPerfect. Until I went to Lion, and now those files are, I
Now
can't
the
use them,
software
I
is
can't
out of
see them.
date.
But it seems like
They're gone.
usually they're always compatible in the sense that now, when they do these changes, they try to accommodate the other changes and make it so that you can read
Mhm.
But it's not right for-
I'm just, you know, there could be something.
No, so that's a really, really good point. So, but this actually reinforces where we're going right now, because what you want to do is treat text, which is what we work with, at the basest of levels. And Adobe Acrobat, especially Pro, allows us to do that. What we want to do is just have text here, and then it doesn't really matter if we're using WordPerfect or if we use some of these other things that really sit on top. As long as we still got the text, the base stuff, then we can use it in multiple contexts. And one of the I mean, who knows, but one of the advantages of using PDF files is there isn't a lot to wade through to get to the actual text. So that's why, and this, remember where we started, as I said, the problem with Word is we're trying to drill down through all this awful code so we can actually use what's there. That's not there with PDF files. So there's no guarantee, but we're at least working in the right way so that 20 years from now we can still use this stuff. And without jumping too far ahead, what we'll get to when we get into, well, next week, or sorry, Friday, is really doing all of our writing at 2 levels, which is treating the text as text and having this kind of, the formatting stuff sit separately from it, if you follow me.
You guys are going way too
But that's Friday. We'll be
That's
Friday. But it's a really good point.
You make a good point about file types as well, because really there are only a handful that will never change. Rich text format will never change. Text format, which nobody uses because it's the most basic, and PDF, because PDF, since its origins, has not changed. Whereas you would probably have found that in Microsoft Word, they changed the formatting 2 years ago, and it's really, they had to create conversion systems, and they changed their system, and it screws everything up. PDFs don't change the basis of their programming, although Acrobat and Adobe kind of claimed PDFs as their main file type. They can be used with everything, really. I mean, that's why every computer can open a PDF one way or another. Something will be able to open it. So that's the beauty of working with PDF and text files. Rich text files is that they're really the lowest common denominator. And PDFs are infinitely more useful than rich text because of what we're about to show you. So after it scans it, I set it up to run the OCR automatically, so it's done that.
Can you show us if it's not automatic?
Yeah, I can redo it, and it'll get mad at me, but we can do it. So if it hasn't done that, or if you didn't tell it to do that, you go to Tools, and then Advanced Editing, and actually in the newer version of Acrobat, this is a little sidebar. It's even easier to work with. But for now, you go to Advanced Editing, and then, what is it under in this one? Oh, no, sorry, it's under this one.
So can you open a PDF?
Oh, no, I've lost it.
Oh, it's just.
Tools.
Oh, I see. They're just here instead of there.
Yeah. Okay, why don't we just show, because that's an old version anyway.
Yeah, I
Just
haven't
we'll
used
show
this in
everybody
years.
yours.
I'll get a nicer PDF. Oh, no. See, here's my research file. Research and research. And research. What a nice one.
Okay. So here, if you actually click on Tools, So the version of PDF, or sorry, the version of Acrobat Pro that you'll buy
Oh, yeah, that does.
has on that side, tools, comment, share. Those are the buttons that you use to access these processes that allow you to do the things that we're doing. So under tools, I think it's,
Then there's one that says
Content.
recognize text.
I think we have to go to content first, don't we?
Edit document text.
No, on this version it's down here where it says recognize text.
Okay.
And then you pick in this file and it will.
So this is making it
Yeah.
that, what is it, optical?
OCR, optical character
This
recognition.
is turning a picture into,
Into text that you can manipulate. Okay.
Oh, so if it gives you this error, essentially it means that you're trying to recognize text that's already there. It says, we already know that that's text, and you can just bypass it if you need to. Because sometimes one page will have it and another page won't. And so you can just say, that's fine, and it'll try each page separately.
but the easiest way to do it, as Spencer said, is to just set all this up beforehand so it happens automatically.
So as soon as you do the scan, it runs through it, which is what I've done here.
So it's doing it by page there, is that what's happening? Yeah.
Well, normally it'll do that. And the way to figure it out is if you get a PDF and you try and select text, you know, like you put your cursor over and it doesn't, if it just like takes the whole thing, you know you've got a picture. If you can pull a word out and select the word, you know
Oh,
it
you
knows
use
it's
text.
Yeah, so for instance, this picture, you know, it's not selectable because there's no actual page. Well, technically there's no text there, I didn't recognize it. But if you go to the front, I can pick all of this and then paste it, and you get the exact same text that was there. Although that's ridiculously small. Now this is one of the weird things that'll happen sometimes, and this it's not usually prohibitively problematic, but if it's not high enough quality, you will get weird things like this, where it is misinterpreted a couple characters. The higher the quality the original, the higher the quality the OCR will be.
Does it make any difference if it's in a different language?
No, as long as it's in
It's by character.
the Arabic alphabet, it should be able to recognize it. And I think they actually have recognition for other alphabets as well. So it'll recognize the characters one by one, and because it does separate it out.
Because I remember the early scanners, they used to, you know, I use a lot of stuff that has diacritical marks, and it would come out as a number sign. So
Yeah.
it's a really
Yeah.
big work job to.
Yeah, generally it's pretty good, and because this is an older form of Acrobat, probably the newer one's even better because they keep updating their system and making it more effective. But if you are looking for a particular word, you can still search. As you can see, most of these words worked out. So if you're looking for a specific word, you're still going to be able to find it. So if I do a search now for, I don't know, the word,
What did you get?
Command F.
Yeah, but really.
So it starts to go.
File, edit, view?
No.
So you can go through and you can pick out
Search, isn't there a search?
all of the words and pick the most frequently occurring word, of course, but
But that's just
Command.
because you,
So
that's
that's like
that's an
Apple
OCR.
sign?
yeah.
But if
Apple
there's
sign.
those diagrams, stuff like that, then it won't pick those up. And there's nothing you can do about those.
I think generally, a lot of the time it will.
In
For
all?
instance, this stuff,
Okay.
it recognized, it tried
Oh,
to
most
recognize
everything.
some of the words.
Control F is
Um,
the early
If it's too small, it probably won't notice that it's letters because it's just
Control and
too
then there's
small.
command.
Yeah, it's one of those two.
Which I think is what happened with this bottom one, is
Depends
this,
if it's a PC.
this text is
or not.
too
yeah, I
small.
used the PC.
And so when you zoom in,
All I know is.
it's not
cut and
really
paste.
recognizable. It's, to us it is, but the computer can't distinguish between these tiny, tiny words. But the bigger ones, for instance, it tried to get these ones. So it just depends on, you know, if it's really, really tiny, it'll struggle. But if it is at all legible, it'll certainly try. In fact, I did some handwriting ones earlier today for my research, and it was trying to figure out the handwriting. Didn't do a very good job
So
with
that's
that.
why Jane's
No,
Um,
no.
Yeah, handwriting, it really doesn't work well with.
No, that will
But-
come,
Mhm.
but we probably need another decade on
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the difficulty, of course, is that handwriting is so particular that
Yeah.
there's no
Right, I can
real
imagine.
standards.
Yeah.
that. Well, that's why CAPTCHA works, right? CAPTCHA is if you sign up for something and it wants to make sure you're a person, not a computer, it'll put those numbers and
Oh,
it'll
yeah.
play with the colors because
Yeah.
computers can't
Yeah,
read like we still can.
yeah.
Eventually CAPTCHA will stop working because they'll get smart enough, but
Mhm.
not for now.
If you were using a book there, I mean, a chapter of a book, you just do it page by page?
Yeah, so if you're doing, like, for instance,
Yeah.
we could do the one you got today, you can just do it on the flatbed part,
Okay.
and you don't have to close it every time. Some people do because you get pressure, but you'll find with the ones that come down this way, you'll get more pressure on one side of the book than the other. So I find the best way when you're doing a lot of pages is to just leave it open, hold your hand over the book, give it a nice even spread of weight. And then the program will automatically realize that the book isn't this big. It'll notice that, okay, the page is only this big, and it'll sort of shrink it down. So it's pretty good at recognizing what is there and what isn't there.
Do you want to talk about CAM scanner?
Oh, cam scanner, yeah. If you have cam scanner or any digital camera, really.
Yeah. See, because where this gets annoying is it does take time to take a book and scan it. So let's say you find a paragraph or several pages that you really want to keep from a book you're reading in the library. You don't want to truck down, because we're all about efficiency. Don't want to truck down and do all this. That's my setup for what
Yeah,
that's what
so
it's saying.
Cam Scanner is an app for your phone, for a smartphone, that you take a picture with the phone and it automatically creates a PDF of that image. And then you can send
You
that
could
to...
do that in the archives when I'm not supposed to be copying.
So we
Yeah,
can do it right now.
Yes.
so you can send that information to Dropbox or Evernote. It can be linked into a couple different programs, so all of these things are linked, which is part of why we made the series. They can all be linked together. Cam Scanner is free, and I think when you export, it puts a little watermark on the image, but usually that's not a big deal. And there are ones you can buy, so if you want to pay a little more to get rid of the watermark, you can do that.
Yeah, so I have it here. So, and I don't really use it that often, so something may go wrong. Spencer uses it pretty regularly, don't you?
I use it in the library.
Okay, so let's say I'm going to take a picture, and I'll take a picture of this. So I'm in the library, and what's happened is it's just activated the camera, right? So I'll just hold this over this piece of text that I've decided I want to capture. I'll take the picture. I wasn't careful about it, so it's not going to be perfect. And then it'll say, okay, we'll just size it. All right, we'll say that's good enough. So it's just going to process it. And then it says, well, are you happy with that? We could tweak things. Sure, we're happy with that. So now it saves the image. And you can set everything up beforehand, so it just processes it all for you. You can send it to Dropbox automatically, right? And now what I have is basically a PDF.
It is a PDF, okay.
of that.
Well, you could almost read it on there,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
So I think, did I run OCR on it? Maybe I did, maybe I
Maybe
didn't.
not.
I could
But
run OCR when I send it
Could you do the
over
same
here.
thing with the digital camera and then just load it
Yeah.
onto your computer?
Yep. And a digital camera is going to have a higher
It'll work a lot.
higher format, obviously, for the image. So if you have a lot of large documents, that's generally what people use cameras for. Set them out nice and flat, take a big digital picture of them, and then use Acrobat to scan that.
So what files would you'd start with a JPEG and go to PDF from
Yep, a
there?
JPEG
Or
or a PNG file is also not bad.
Okay, so my failed experiment of trying to scan I end up
Yeah,
with all
so
these
you just take
JPEGs,
it,
right?
regular camera, it would output it as a JPEG, you turn it into a PDF, and then
Okay, how
treat it
do
the
you
way
do
you're treating it.
Page by page?
Well, that would be if you just have a
Just a
section
single-
of something. Like,
Yeah.
let's say you have this book that
So-
really,
How
Five
I guess
paragraphs
doing this
you
a
wanna
lot
keep.
in last couple
Right.
and
days.
you don't want to spend all the
Create
time.
Mhm.
Right,
down
right,
and
checking
then
it back.
combine
And you
files
just
into a single PDF.
Very often you might have
So that's what you
chapter
want, right? You want them
or
all
like
to
a
be the same
content
document.
Yeah.
of the chapter, so you've
Starts
got
to
20
become
And then you
more
just
work then.
That would
Might
be
not
drag
nice
and
be
if you
drop
want to scan it.
all of the
and-
images you
You
want.
can
You
bring
just
it to a
scan
scanner
or
for,
you can
yeah.
Are the
Individually.
scanners always to
So
be
let's do it this way.
the ones
Add
that
a
you would use
folder.
for this? Because, this
You can
looks
do
like,
smaller scanners.
yeah.
We
What's
have
the-
one of these scanners, we just bought one in the
For
department
the
this year,
department?
which should be a pretty, I mean,
So this-
we just
right?
bought it 2 months ago.
So
it'll-
And it's a
it
multiple
gets everything that was in that
page, you know.
folder.
Because our,
Yeah.
we
Puts it all in
have
the
this
list.
photocopy here in the department, and
we
the
actually-
university is using one, but have
You don't
a
want,
scanning option on the photocopy machine. You guys have that in your
just
department?
pick
One.
So it's the photocopy machine, but there's a scan option, and it's really fast, and it's all free. And it just, all of our emails are entered, and it just sends it to your email. It's not the highest quality. I think I might be able to get it to set to a higher resolution, but right now it just comes and it's okay.
So you
But
put the
Oh, wow.
material on
Um,
the
photocopy.
Xerox
So then you just
copier
click combine
and then
files and it'll go.
it doesn't take, you don't tell it
Go
to
through
take
all
paper
the-
copies, it only does what you
It only just,
described.
it just scans it,
So
sends
it
your email,
opens the
and it
images,
doesn't cost anything. It just
converts
sends the
those.
image.
These are really big images.
But then I'm wondering, so if I do that, then it sends to my email.
But
then
the
I
scanner
open
did
it up.
high quality
I can
scan,
then
which
go
is
into
why they're,
Acrobat Pro
so they're
and
bigger,
save it in there
but
and
that's
do all
fine.
this stuff.
Yeah.
because that means your PDF will be
But
high
that would be,
quality.
that is like having a series
Because
of
your
JPEGs,
scanner
right? Where it'll
just
come
took
your
a really
email.
good image.
It's like a,
Uh,
it's not
so when it
like this
converts it
one,
over-
right? You know, it would be a series of one.
No,
No,
no, you
how do I
can
do
say,
this?
give me one PDF file.
Yeah,
Prevent-
Oh, you
it
can.
comes as
Oh,
one
yeah.
PDF.
So
Oh,
30
right.
pages is
Okay,
one
so-
file.
So essentially, you just have to run it through
We should
Acrobat,
get
and
that.
Acrobat will do
Yeah.
it.
Maybe you have
Yeah,
it
how do
in
I
a
do that?
photocopy, or I don't know.
Well, that's,
Well, we
that's
have
what
to-
this,
you're in class,
so if you go up to
Yeah.
Don't we share, no, we share
create a
all
PDF
No.
from the scanner.
I'm
It's
sure.
just a, it's
Oh,
a
and
new
then
one
I
I think that we just
Yeah, and
got.
then it'll open up the
But
scanning
I
software.
think all of the
And
photocopies
then you
now
put
that they're
that
buying
one.
at the university have.
But you said you
You're,
didn't have Acrobat when you were doing
Getting
it at
up
home,
to a
did
new
you? So-
photocopy.
I have Acrobat at home.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's so
With
friendly.
a crappy
It's
machine.
Oh,
just,
right.
because you
Good
just,
scanners
you
at the
scan
office,
it to
but I don't have
photocopy
Acrobat.
machine, and it's really
Right.
fast.
Well,
It's faster than
as long as your
photocopy.
scanner's
Yeah.
connected
Because
into
you
your
have to
laptop,
wait for the paper.
Acrobat should be able to
Right.
find it.
So you just turn.
It's like,
and
for this
it's really
one,
fast.
But also all the bulk. I
Um,
mean,
How do you
when you
learn
have
It'll
a-
give you
I
options.
think your
Well, we
library
only have
involved
one.
with the kinds of
Just
But if
stuff
you
in
have-
your library loans, gotta
It
go
should
back to
recognize whatever
scanning,
you have.
or half looked at,
and
I
then
would go and
it'll-
photocopy a chunk of it.
Well, that's where
Yeah,
this
so
becomes key, because we
Yeah.
don't.
So the
we
whole
don't
point
know
of
what's
Acrobat
gonna
is
be.
that it
That's
always
why
wants to
we
create a
research. We have a
PDF
hunch,
from
we
everything.
hope, we pray, but we don't
Yeah.
know.
So,
Yeah.
So if we can
There you go.
accumulate
So
a
it's
bunch of things
brought in.
without all this anxiety about sending things back,
Yeah.
then
So
after,
it's
as the
brought
book is
a
evolving,
whole,
Yeah.
we can say, what was the, two or three words come out that you remember.
right, so
from
that
the
one's
article.
upside down.
And
Yeah.
you search those,
It doesn't go
and
enough
you
to
got
turn
it.
them.
Well,
There's no
this is
sorting
the
through
cool part.
boxes,
So we go
or,
over here.
Yeah.
going to the library, or
Yeah.
We
trying to remember
recognize
which box or folder
Yeah.
you put it
It's a
in.
file.
You just type it in your computer and it'll say, oh, okay, well, this is the one.
So it'll take a little while to do
So,
this.
I
See
guess
what
you
it
can
says
show us, like,
rotating?
when you read through this
It'll
document,
recognize
what
that
you do, like how you
the
mark
words
it
are
and
upside
stuff.
down.
Yeah.
It'll rotate the
Yeah,
whole
we can do
page,
that.
At some point.
because that's what it looks for, is the upside down text. So once it's done
Because I've never marked anything
this,
up
they'll all be right
digitally.
side up.
Okay.
I mean, I always do like what you
recognize
say,
text in this
I
file.
print it off and then I mark it
And if you
off.
have a lot of
And then I have
files,
to rescan
if you have
it,
a
but
lot
I
of
don't, I
PDFs,
just
old
file it.
PDFs that aren't
And then I
recognized, you
don't.
can,
Oh, you follow it?
In
as
multiple
a
files.
file.
I know that.
And then I can't find it, or I write little
Yeah.
hand notes. I
Yeah.
write notes,
So
yeah, and then I.
that's the other-
Or yellow stickers.
Okay.
the other way.
All right, so
I don't know
let's
how you
do
mark
that.
that
So
usually.
Notes,
how we make notes and highlights and underlines and stuff.
the notes, I really wish we had an updated version of Acrobat.
These are mine. I could get my computer.
Well, we can show what it looks like,
Or use yours. Can we use yours?
just because this one doesn't have the tools at the side.
Yeah, we
Well,
should
this
use the
says
newest
10.
versions.
10.13 or something.
Mhm.
Only thing is that the glare is.
If you pull it forward
There,
there.
oh yeah.
That's
It's an upside down page.
It's
That might
upside
have-
down, because of the book, where you do one page and then when you're scanning,
Mhm.
because of the shape of the book, the next page is upside down.
Oh, shoot.
And so it's turning them all right side up now.
Oh, excellent.
I know the ones in the archives also do that with microfilm, which is amazing. There's times when Union Records, they had so little money, they filmed them on 2 sides of the microfilm. And in the old microfilm readers, you couldn't read it. You could do half. But now it'll turn it around. I mean, I get tired thinking about all the possibilities.
Yeah.
And also how to keep up with this.
Yeah, no, I just canceled it so I could show some, but we can run it again. So if you want to, for instance, highlight something, highlighting is pretty easy. There's a button up at the top, and you can highlight the text. If you want to make a note, say on biologically based for whatever reason, we'll get rid of this after. You can add a note, and so you can say, at this point, I want to have this little note here, and then you can close it down. But if you ever want to open it up again, you just click on it and it brings it back up.
Or you can read them all in the...
Or you can go on the side where it says Tools, change to Comment, and you can see where the different comments are. So this shows there's highlighted text here, and it'll bring you to that. This one will bring you down to here. And then there are other options for if you want to leave an audio note for yourself. I've never done that, but you could.
What does that mean?
If you wanted to, if you wanted to make a lot of comments, it's very easy. You hit that button.
Seriously, one of the things I did, I started to do, because last year, you remember, I had shoulder surgery, and so I couldn't write for 6 weeks. So one of the things that I did was I committed myself to using voice activation software, essentially, so running things just off my voice. So what I did in the graduate course I taught in the fall was I said every assignment comes in as a PDF, and then I sat down, I just use this normally now, and I, with my cursor, go through the student's paper. So I got Spencer's paper, and I get to the end of a paragraph, and again, this is a time thing, right? It takes time, we start scratching stuff down, and then, cheapers, we're writing this again. But it becomes very, and you have to be careful what you say, but literally it's click, and because it's on, I speak.
Yeah.
Spencer, : at this point, I think you've really got to give more attention to X, Y, and Z, period. Click, now we're done. And I would just go through Spencer's paper, reading it on the screen, making these comments, and something that would take 25 minutes to mark now takes 12 minutes to mark.
Oh, so
because I'm
it's
not
writing. But it is. It's recognizing your voice.
It takes my voice and it puts everything there.
So it doesn't
and then,
send him an audio.
No, and then I
So
save it's on my computer.
Really being insincere.
Maybe dripping with sarcasm. And you do have to read your notes, because sometimes you get stuff wrong. And so I invited somebody to my lap at one point. That was embarrassing. But as long as you check, you're okay. Let's see how it goes very well.
Yeah.
Um, What other
Well,
specific
something I
things?
use a lot is a bookmark. So I've got all these
So you
scanned,
bookmark a page in it?
yeah, I've got all these scanned archival files. And it's just, the archives just prefers to scan the whole file. And I was too busy, I just said scan it all. But there's only 3 or 4 pages out of 300 that are really of any interest to me. And so I go through, you still have to read it all, and then, oh yeah, that's the page. And so you can mark the page and then put your comments on there, what it's about, and then when you go back to it, you just click on bookmarks, it takes you to that page and you see what you've written there. So rather than going through the whole document again.
Do you name the bookmark or something? You must.
Well, it sticks with the file.
Okay. Oh, and there are only so many, so just
Yeah.
if you only put one in, just
Yeah,
one.
so it's
Yeah.
automatically made a bookmark for every page
Yeah.
essentially, but you can
Right.
specify
You can overwrite.
Okay.
which ones you
But
want.
again, your comments are searchable, right? So you could type in something, find this, and it will find your comment. So you've got access to that now as text.
I think if I do a search for test, it should bring up No, it doesn't actually. You have to search it through here, not through the other search
I'm
thing.
sure we can change the settings though.
Maybe.
Is there a way that you can, do this annotation and then it can export your annotations to a file or something? So, you could have a project and then, maybe it wouldn't work, but you know how if you want to take some sort of notes or do a summary of something, and then you can have a sort of where that project is in
Yeah,
so
that's
that
a great
you can easily
So
look at it without having to look through every article.
The best way, I don't know how you work, but the way I work is if I'm going to make a lot of notes on something, I create a text file. And so I have my PDF, and then I'll have a text file. And if I'm riffing off on what I've just read and I want to capture, in several sentences, then I will have a separate file of my own that I'll just put everything in there that I might use in an article or something that I write later on. And then I link the PDF to the text file, and I link the text file to the PDF.
So the text file is also in Acrobat.
No, the text file is just it's an RTF.
Oh, it's an
It's a
RTF,
rich text
just
file,
rich
which was the other super basic thing that we talked about.
And you have them open at the same time, just
Yeah,
one window.
so I put one on one screen and one on the other screen.
Oh, because you have two computers.
I have 4 screens.
Wow.
If you
We
have
only
two-
get 2 here.
So I suppose if you just have the one, you could just do different windows on the computer, but it's not as efficient, I see.
You can make that, you can have
Yeah.
your screen easily.
So you then do an RTF file, and then you just put it in there.
How do you link them?
And link them somehow.
I link them in DevonThink, which is week, well, May 23rd.
Next week, yeah.
So
We'll have to wait till then.
you have to wait.
Yeah, okay.
DevonThink is great for that because it operates as a library and a repository for everything. You can have a PDF and link rich text to it, and you can tag everything and tag them all together and put them in folders. And it's definitely my go-to for acting as a major library for everything. Something that you were asking about a couple of weeks ago, I think. I've been doing my work on 1812 this week, so I'll show you guys what I came up with. And this is actually kind of a work in progress because I just did it today. Yeah, so that's our test
I
one.
can't figure out these documents.
This is something I came up with today because I have to start doing transcriptions. And thankfully, so for this document, it's a letter that someone wrote. So we have on the left, the computer can't make heads or tails of that.
That's a picture.
And that's a picture that was an image file that I made into a PDF. And then this, Brock University, this is from their library, so they did a transcription at some point, but most of their stuff doesn't have it. I was fortunate enough to find one that did. So what I did was I made a text file and put their transcription in there and then saved it as a PDF. And now I can see them side by side. So I can see, this is the original, this is the text, and it's all searchable, so I can actually see. So if I want to find a particular thing that person was writing about, I can find it just by searching within this one. So it's one file, but it contains the original and the transcription side by
So
side.
how did you create them?
Yeah.
So this is the weird part. Essentially, I had to make a
Oh, I
blank
see.
Word document that is filled with spaces. This sounds really odd, but there's an option to edit the text. So I brought in a blank Word document that is just filled with all spaces, so it doesn't look like anything. And then once you're in here, you say to Acrobat, I want to edit this text, and you can read from this side and type it into this side. It's not elegant because literally I did this morning. So if you wanted to do this, I'd probably have to help you get it set up because there isn't really a good way of doing it. But it says, Eliza Jarvis, she's now known as Mrs. W.B. Hamilton. So I just type in what I'm reading from that side into this side.
But what I don't understand is why did you need to put in that one with a lot of spaces? Why couldn't you just bring in a blank document?
That is kind of the limitation of Acrobat because Acrobat is not designed as a text editing software. So it's not really, like you can't open it and just say, I'm going to type a letter. It's really not built for that, and there's no real good way for it to do that. But what it can do in some cases is edit the text. So if I went over here, technically I could probably edit this text and change the words that it already scanned in. So for my purpose over here, I don't know what those words are yet, so I just put in all spaces, and then I can just overwrite the spaces with whatever I'm reading.
So you just sat there with the
Yeah, I think I did one row of spaces and then copied and pasted it down, because it would have taken a long time.
In a Word file. And you
In a
can
Word
convert
file,
it.
and then just saved as a PDF.
Yeah.
And so what that does is it saves it, it looks blank, but underneath the code says these are all characters, empty space characters, they don't mean anything. And so when I bring it up into Acrobat, now I can click anywhere and add some text because the original font is not available. Okay, good to know. So you can just add in the text wherever you need to. It's not extremely well put together yet. I'll see if I can come up with a better version, but it's doable. And I mean, the beauty of it is that if you do already have a transcription, it's very easy to bring those side by side. I mean, the thing that I've developed is for doing a transcription live, right, if you have to do it yourself. If it already exists, it's very easy to put them side by side, and then you always have them together.
So if it already exists, then you just make that into a PDF and
Yep.
you import it into.
Yep, and importing is pretty straightforward. This button here brings up, a list of your pages, and so you just insert pages, pick the PDF of the transcription, and bring it in. Yeah.
Well, I understood the other time when we spoke about this, there was a program for this, but no.
Well,
so
there's-
you're creating one sort of.
There's an online program.
Okay.
So for big transcription projects run by universities, they have a software that does that. But obviously, I can't get my hands on the web service doesn't really work well for offline work, what I'm doing. So they do exist, but they're not built for this kind of thing. They're built for sort of crowdsourced transcription projects.
Right, okay.
And they look very much like this. It's just a blank spot and then the original image. The National Archives in the US is the biggest one right now. They're doing a project to transcribe all of their stuff, which is kind of a big
So then when you
project.
do all this, you then put it all in Dropbox, right? You-
Or wherever.
Yeah,
But or wherever, but if
Yeah.
you're using the digital method,
yeah.
is that
Yeah.
where I should put it, right? You should technically.
Well,
Dropbox
this goes back to, remember, Spencer's method is to put everything in Dropbox.
Yes, and then,
And my method is to put it on my hard drive and tell my hard drive to also send it to Dropbox.
Yeah,
And
So
I
I'm
guess-
old and he's
yes,
young.
and I guess this is
What does that make us?
So related to this is, if you are doing it then on your computer and
So
you
if
want
you
it to
wanted
go
to
up to
search your
Dropbox,
comments,
you can
go to
automatically
advanced
set it to
search.
go up to Dropbox to update something
It's
that's
just
up
a
there, or do you just have to upload and download and upload and
And
download?
then
No, if you-
advanced
Now that I've been
search
working with
instead
it,
of finding advanced search and then you're searching your
I
comments.
feel like
in
it's
your-
cumbersome.
Well-
I download it to my computer and I do changes and then I upload it to Dropbox, but there's a way to sync the
what is
documents.
this?
Yeah, well, that's what Kevin does. I mean, what I do is I just work in the Dropbox folder.
With some, what.
So when I open a document, it doesn't leave that folder ever. Technically, I'm working on
Yeah.
the file in Dropbox.
But if.
But when I'm done with it, it'll sync and it'll save the new version.
So how do you get it to sync? Like I don't think my Dropbox, it's not syncing. Do you know what I mean? Like
Okay,
it
so.
kind of
it's,
relates to this, but maybe it doesn't, I don't know, but it just.
Well, that's using that, did you try that little program that we talked about
Which one is
a
that?
couple of weeks ago?
The,
Mac Drop Any.
Mac
or
Drop
the,
Any.
why are you PC?
So there's that other piece of software.
That we found, what was that called?
Yeah, I have it written down. Maybe
So
we
bring, next week,
did- we did that.
because I won't be here Friday, but next Wednesday, let's play around with it.
Okay.
We'll fire it up. It
Okay.
should, there's no reason for it not to work.
Yeah, because it sounds like your method so far is very much like what Kevin does with doing things on your computer and then having
Mhm.
Dropbox
That's what I
grab
would
them.
do.
Whereas my method is to always work out of Dropbox and only save stuff on my computer if it's not important. So it's just, I trust the Dropbox system to always work. And I work on 2 different computers, so I need to have that accessibility all the time.
Yeah, that's the key.
You had mentioned making a template for your letters of recommendation.
Yes,
Is that possible?
I'll send you mine. It's a Word document, and then I save it as a PDF.
Oh,
Because it's
okay,
easier to,
okay.
like Spencer was saying, it's hard to write in PDF or in Adobe Acrobat. So I write in Word, even though I hate it, but then I just press print and I save as a PDF. And yeah, it's a Department of History's template.
So you could basically
Oh,
take
this
a
one.
piece of
It's
letterhead,
letterhead.
sign it at the end.
Yeah.
You could just take that, and then you sign it at the bottom, you scan it, and then you
Heidi sent this out to
do
us.
the OPCR.
Sometime.
Yeah,
And then you
that's
made
it.
one
And
personalized
then
it
you
to
fill
you
it in,
somehow.
right?
Yeah.
If you use the
Yeah.
OPCR.
Yeah, you can just change this.
Well, what I do is I just, in Word, I write the letter. This is the, you should have a Word version. I'll send you my Word version
Oh,
of this.
okay.
And Heidi sent that out because I begged and pleaded, and she said, I don't know, and I went over to the printing folks, I went over to ITS, how I spent my sabbatical. But eventually I found someone who said, oh yeah, we'll give you the base. No, it was the print shop. I went to the print shop, and they sent me the base file for their letterhead that they send us on printed paper. And I sent that to Heidi as well. And then I used that, and they send it to me, I think, as a Word file. So I just use it as a Word file, and then, like I say, I inserted the signature. So my base signature is all
You
done.
scan the
Yeah.
signature?
So basically what you want to do is write your signature. You know what? Do it and bring it in next week, and if not Friday, then we'll do it.
Okay.
Write your signature down, we'll
Just
put it
on a piece of
on a
paper.
piece of paper, we'll take a picture, we'll scan it. It'll now be a picture that you can use however you want.
Oh, then you just import it wherever.
And then you just, what you do in Acrobat Pro is you say, insert this, and
Oh.
it goes wherever you
Insert it
want.
anywhere you want.
Could you send me the word too?
Yeah, I'll send it.
Yeah,
I'll
I'd
send
like
it,
to, yeah,
okay.
yeah.